In today's video, we will make an attempt to understand what a fraction is and how to find its value. Let's take a look at some whole numbers first. If we look at the number 12, we are able to quantify 12 with objects 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There are 12 diamonds. We can count each one, and we can represent the number 12 in the place value chart. We know each digit falls in a place value. The 2 is in the ones column, and the 1 is in the tens column. We have one 10 and two ones to make 12. Let's look at the number 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hearts. We can count each one by one, and in the place value chart, the 5 is in the ones column. Let's look at the number 1. There is one circle, and the number 1 is in the ones column in the place value chart. What happens though if we take the number 1? We can see one rectangle on the screen. What if we split that rectangle into two parts? Part 1 and part 2. Each part is now a fraction. The fact that we have two total parts means that that number 2 becomes the denominator in the fraction. Each part is 1 out of 2 parts, and so we form the fraction 1 over 2, or 1/2. On the number line, that's 1/2, and that piece is 1/2, and 1/2 is represented on the number line between 0 and 1, right in the middle. Let's try to take the number 1, that same rectangle, and split it into 3 equal parts. 1, 2, 3. We now have 3 equal parts, and so our fraction is formed out of 3. And each part of the rectangle that was split up is now 1 out of 3 parts. 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Each part is a third. And on the number line, 1/3 is located below. Let's look at the proper fraction 2 over 5. Fractions are formed with a number on the top, a number on the bottom, and a line in the middle. The top number is always known as the numerator. The bottom number is always known as the denominator. But what value does 2 over 5 represent? What is another way of representing the fraction 2 over 5 as a number? In order to do that, we have to understand that the line between the 2 and the 5 also means divide. And so this fraction 2 over 5 really means 2 divided by 5. So we can take long division and we can say 2 divided by 5 and attempt to divide. Now dividing means trying to make groups out of the number present. We need to know how many groups of 5 we can make out of 2. And we know that we cannot make a group of 5 if there are only 2 objects. And so 5 into 2, or 2 divided by 5, is 0. At this point, because we don't have any digits left, we have to put a decimal point and add a 0 as a placeholder. Now we can see what looks like 5 into 20. And we know 5 into 20, or 20 divided by 5, is 4. 4 times 5 is 20. When we subtract, we get 0. Therefore, 2 over 5 is equivalent to 0.4. Now, where does that fall on the number line? We have 0.4. So 0.4 falls between 0 and 1 on the number line. If we place 2 over 5 on the number line, which is really 0.4, it falls right there. Let's look at 1 over 10. Again, the 1 is the numerator, the 10 is the denominator, and 1 over 10 really means 1 divided by 10. What value does 1 over 10 really represent? We can divide 1 by 10, and we know that 1 cannot divide by 10 because we are looking for groups of 10, and we only have 1. So 10 into 1 goes 0 times. At this point, because we have no more digits, we have to put a decimal point and add a 0 as a placeholder. Now it appears as 10 divided by 10, which goes 1 time. 1 times 10 is 10. And when you subtract, you're left with 0. So 1 over 10 really represents the value 0.1. Again, where does that appear on the number line? 0.1. It falls between 0 and 1, and more towards the 0. 1 over 10 falls right there on the number line. Now let's look at 1 over 4. Again, the 1 is the numerator, the 4 is the denominator. And when we divide 1 by 4, we see that 4 cannot go into 1 because we need to find a group of 4 and we only have 1. So 4 goes into 1 0 times. We place a decimal point. We add a 0 as a placeholder. Now 4 can go into 10 2 times. 4 times 2 is 8. And when we subtract, we get 2. At this point, we're not done because we have to continue until we arrive at an answer of 0, if possible. We add a 0 again as a placeholder, and we bring that down to meet the 2 to form the number 20. 4 into 20 goes 5 times. 5 times 4 is 20. When we subtract, we get 0 and we're done. So 1 over 4 is really equivalent to 0.25. And if you look at it, 1/4, sometimes we call 1 over 4 1/4, is equal to 0.25, which looks like 25 cents. We know that 1/4 in money is 25 cents. On the number line, where does 0.25 fall? Well, again, it falls between 0 and 1. And if we look, 1/4 falls between 0.2 and 0.3. That is where 0.25 falls. What do you notice about all of the answers we have arrived at so far? Let's take a look. 0.4, 0.1, 0.25. What is similar about all of these numbers? We can clearly see that 0 is the first digit in all of our answers. The ones place is 0. The value of a proper fraction is less than 1. The value of a proper fraction is also between 0 and 1. Let's look at 2 over 5 again. We said 2 over 5 is equal to 0.4. Let's place that in the place value chart. We know that 0 is in the ones column. And because we now have a decimal, we have to add a place value column next to the decimal called tenths. And the 4 goes in the tenths column. So this is really 0.4 is 4 tenths. 2 over 5 is equal to 4 tenths is equal to 0.4. Let's look at 1 over 10. 1 over 10 was 0.1. The 0 goes in the ones column, the decimal, and then we have to go into the tenths column and put our 1. So this is really 1 tenth. 0.1, 1 over 10, they're all the same value. And finally, let's look at 1 over 4. We said that 1 over 4 is equal to 0.25. The 0 is in the ones column, the decimal point. The next column to the right is the tenths column, which we put the number 2. And one more column to the right is known as hundredths, which is where we will put the number 5. And we read this as 25 hundredths. 0.25 is 25 hundredths, which is also equivalent to 1 over 4. So to review, fractions tell us a part of a whole. We can divide fractions to find the decimal equivalent. Dividing proper fractions will always give us an answer between 0 and 1. The first digit to the right of the decimal we call tenths. And the second digit to the right of the decimal is called hundredths.